First of all, congratulations. So
Thank you.
I guess our first obvious question is, I was reading on your Twitter and you said, quote, "For the next 4 years, we will have a far-right governor and a Republican majority in the state House and Senate. The only way to put that power in check is by getting these Democrats elected." I want to hear your thoughts about how you can work with this conservative administration as you've just outlined.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I have a strong interest in bipartisanship. I grew up in a very conservative household. I've been a financial advisor for 20 years. I've helped working families of all ideologies save their money and invest for their future, keep their eye on the goal. And, it's people of all ideologies too, so I can work with anybody. But I do believe we should have balance in government. If a government moves a certain way, in this case, I think it has been pretty extreme right. A lot of the moderate Republicans have been pushed out. It's important to have another voice at the table, not just yes people. And my current opponent is pretty extreme himself. And I think it's important that we have somebody in there that stands up for people. A lot of the people in government usually stand up for their corporate donors ahead of everything. If you look at campaign finance reports, you see max outs from a lot of multinational corporations and wealthy people. But we need to stand for values, and that means stopping all the giveaways that we have at the top. Investing in people and health and education and access and infrastructure. And I will always be a champion for that and stand up for that. The treasurer is the fiduciary of the people. They have to do what's in the best interest of the people, and I will always do that.
So let's talk about your priorities should you be elected to the office of Louisiana State Treasurer.
Yeah, we have a lot of things going on economically in our state, a lot of problems. I'd say the first thing is our insurance crisis. I live in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We've been hurt by hurricanes, and the insurance crisis really got started there. And we need to make sure that we're doing the right things. Unfortunately, I see a lot of our elected officials only talking about doubling down on the same bad ideas, just giving more money to the insurance companies, not really focusing on the people and bringing those premiums down. And there's a lot of great solutions out there that we can work on that aren't really being entertained. So we need somebody to stand up and say, hey, let's look at these other things. The second thing is just tackling and reversing trickle-down economics. Since Bobby Jindal, we've gone all in, where we have too many giveaways at the top. We're cutting investments in people. We're raising sales taxes, and people are struggling in this state. So we need to make sure that our government moves to helping people. The third thing I would say is job opportunities. We need to make sure we invest in and bringing in new jobs into the state, high-paying jobs. I have 2 little girls, and I don't want them to move away. I want them to grow up in Louisiana and feel like they can pursue an industry or whatever their pursuit is to, right now in Louisiana, we only have a couple different industries here, and you have to leave the state. So I want to focus on that too.
So you're talking in a general sense about your priorities. I want to get a little bit more granular with some details. As state treasurer, what can you specifically do to help lower insurance rates for property and car and help mitigate this insurance crisis?
Yeah, great question. I think we need a state reinsurance program to bring down these premiums. A lot of other states do it with health insurance because the problem is we have a lot of insurance companies that don't have enough reinsurance to cover in case of a big disaster, and then they end up folding and leaving people stuck, not being made whole. So we need to make sure that they have enough reinsurance. If they can't afford it, well, we need the state to purchase in bulk at a lower price and renegotiate those prices to these insurance companies to make sure they can afford it. Also make sure that they can't just drop people and leave the state and leave people hanging. So if you write insurance for some people, you need to write it for everybody in the state. We also need to reinforce citizens insurance. A lot of that's done through the Treasurer's office. A lot of the financing for some of these state programs is done through the Treasurer's office and the Bond Commission. Citizens insurance, which a lot of people are having to rely on now because it's the insurance of last resort, it needs to be stronger and more competitive. And I will make sure that that happens.
So the other priority you talked about is eliminating the so-called trickle economics. Can you do that from a role of maybe restructuring or participating in the restructuring of our current tax structure? Like, what specifically can you do to reverse that tide of so-called trickle-down economics?
Yeah, right now we have just too many giveaways with ITEP, the Industrial Tax Exemption Program. Really our tax code is very regressive, meaning the middle class and the poor bear the brunt of the taxes, especially with sales taxes. I think the focus needs to be on lowering that. And I get worried when people talk about eliminating the state income tax, because that really is the biggest tax cut at the top where we don't need it. And that's going to lead to them going after the homestead exemption, which a lot of people do not want to get rid of, which is another tax increase on working people. So those things need to stop. We got to end those giveaways. There's a lot of revenue there that we could have, and that revenue should be used to invest in health and education, investing in make sure teachers are paid enough, and investing in our communities, because a lot of our brain drain is because our communities are not being invested in, our young people are not being invested in. So families feel that they have no other choice but to leave this state.
So that brings me to the third priority you outlined, which is a diversified economy to prevent brain drain. What can you do as state treasurer to foster a more diversified economy?
Yeah, so the treasurer runs the balance sheet of the state. So we use the investments of the state to invest in new investment opportunities. Our bond commission finances a lot of projects, big capital projects, whether it's a stadium, a hospital, or whatever. Those investments should be made to try to bring diversity to our economy, because there's a lot of high-paying jobs out there. And if you don't work in just a couple industries, you really don't have a career here. So we need to make sure that we bring in new industries and are friendly to them so people can stay here.
Let's talk a minute about the budget. I think that the general public has a misunderstanding of how much or how little the state treasurer is involved in establishing the state budget. The legislature establishes the budget. As treasurer, would you like to see a more active role in that process? And if so, how would that look?
Absolutely. I think the treasurer should have a more active role. In the Constitution, the Louisiana Constitution, the treasurer is the fiduciary for the people of the state, the economic fiduciary. The treasurer doesn't answer to the governor or the legislature. They answer directly to the people. But they are supposed to advise the governor and the legislature. I have experienced 20 years as a financial advisor, and I'm a fiduciary too for the last 20 years, so I have to work in the best interest of the people. So I would take a very active role in pushing good economic bills. Right now in our legislature, I feel like we put too much interest for the corporations ahead of the people, and I will be a champion for that. And I will use, the treasurer also runs the bond commission. So a lot of the stuff that out of the budget comes to the bond commission, and the treasurer helps prioritize what is most needed. And I will always prioritize projects that help people directly.
So there has been a lot of conversation under John Schroeder's administration as state treasurer about whether or not to invest in bonds, other vehicles, deal with banks that support environmentally and socially conscious priorities. There's a technical term, I think, what do they call it, ESGs?
Yes.
Okay, where do you stand on that?
I think we should lift those bans. I'm all about investing for the best return no matter what, and that's what I've done for 20 years helping our clients. You invest in the best opportunities, what's going to get you the best return, and I feel like we've gotten away from that. With you have corporate donors really running things. Whenever our elected officials start doing the dirty work for the big corporate donors and banning certain investments, that is not being a fiduciary and working for the interests of the people. And my opponent, he has a long history of that, of being extreme and taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from those same big corporate donors. we need change. We need somebody that's independent, that doesn't do that has experience in helping people. So lifting those bans immediately, not to say that we would overload in those investments. If the investment's there and the opportunity looks great, let's go for it and try to make money and put money in people's pockets.
All right, so to wrap up this interview, what differentiates you from your opponent, John Fleming?
I would say, especially my experience, I've actually worked with working people, managing investments, advised them, small businesses and working families. My opponent doesn't have any experience doing that. Second of all, independence. I've always been an independent person. Never been influenced, especially by big corporations. My opponent has been a career politician for a long time, and a lot of them stay in power because they can be beholden to those interests. You will get independence with me. And the last thing is passion. You know, I love Louisiana. I've been here my entire life. I have 2 little girls, 8 and 5 years old, and I just dream of, I want them to love this state too. I want them to see what I saw my entire life and the beauty and the culture of this state. And too many of our young ones are leaving. And, I want to do my best. I feel responsible because I know how to help fix the economy in the state. I want them to stay here and live a great life and, of course, be close to Dad.
Are there any other thoughts you want to share with viewers and voters in advance of the election?
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm running, especially, I've been managing money, advising my clients for 20 years, but I cut my teeth in the 2008 financial crisis. That had a big effect on me. A lot of what I thought about economics was flipped upside down. And I went on a deep dive and I said, what is causing these big downturns and what usually does it take to come out of them? And my research showed the same trends. And unfortunately in Louisiana, I see that same trend where we've gone all in on trickle-down economics. And the best way to come out of it is investing in people. There's no other secret to a good economy, is investing in your people. Those people will stay here, build their communities, have the tools that they need. And that's how you build a state. And now that I know this, I feel the responsibility to do everything I can for Louisiana and its people.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thanks for
Karen.
joining us, and we'll be watching.
Yeah, I appreciate that.